I don't know if I'm gonna make it, y'all. I don't know if I'm gonna make it. If it don't heat up soon, I'm gonna have to dip to somewhere that does heat up because I didn't come for this. I did not sign up for this. I did not sign up for winter in May. Hola, hola mi gente. ¿Qué pasa? Y bienvenidos de nuevo a mi canal. If you're new here, what is up? My name is Ariana and I am a digital nomad. I create travel content as I journey around the world. So today I'm here to give you guys a bit of an update and share why Lisbon was not for me. Many of you saw the video that I created on my trip to Lisbon that I took a couple years back. I stayed for 2 weeks and I loved it. I thoroughly enjoyed Lisbon so much and it made such an impact on me that I decided I wanted to go and try living there long term. Portugal has a digital nomad visa that allows visa holders to stay there for a year to 2 years, I believe. So that caught my eye. I was like, I loved it so much when I was there on vacation. Why not give it a try and see if I could live there long term? Plus, with it being part of the EU, I thought it'd be a great idea if I started out with the digital nomad visa and maybe worked my way up to getting a passport and having EU citizenship. All sounds like a great idea, right? Well, turns out I was wrong. I landed in Portugal on May 1st. With the intentions of staying for 3 months, so staying through the summer. By May 6th, I kind of had an idea that I was not going to be there for the 3 months, let alone trying for the visa any longer. And I ended up leaving by June 6th. So I barely made it a month, and I just learned that living in Lisbon was not for me. So in this video today, I just wanted to share some of the reasons why Lisbon just didn't make the cut for me when it came to a place that I could see myself living in long term. Okay, so the first reason that Portugal did not work out for me, specifically Lisbon, but I think this could apply to all of Portugal, was the weather. It was cold when I landed in May. I didn't understand. I had packed like spring and summer outfits. I realized that they were coming out of maybe like a winter and rolling into spring, but I definitely expected it to be a lot warmer than it actually was. Y'all, I am over this weather in Lisbon. Over it. It's cold. And I thought it was just me, but no, it's actually cold. Like, it is May 17th and people are walking around with coats on because it's actually that cold. I have had on the same hoodie probably for like the last 4 or 5 days now because this is one of the only warm pieces of clothing that I have. I came here prepared for spring, summer because it's May. I was like, okay, if anything, it might be like a little chilly. I thought it was really gonna be rainy the first, since I got here May 1st. So coming out of April, you know, a little rainy season. No, it's cold. It is actually freaking cold. A lot of the time that I was there, it was cloudy, it was cold. It was just not, it was not giving what it was giving when I was there for vacation and was there in the middle of June. Now, mind you, June and May, those are 2 different months, but like it still was supposed to be summertime. This weather is just so gross. I need sun in my life. Oh, look at the window. Can you see it? That's how cold it gets in here at night. I think it's warmed up today. You can see people are, well, jackets and things, but I did see one guy in some shorts. But yeah, this is the daily. I have seen in other places in the EU this year particularly, like they have had cold, unusually cold temperatures in the summertime. Like it is summertime now, and some people are still saying that certain places like France and still in Portugal. I had a friend message me in Portugal saying that it was still like kind of cold and rainy. Yeah, not typical weather for Portugal, but I knew that if it was if it was as cold as what I was feeling when I was in May, if that was even close to what I would be feeling in the winter time, I wasn't gonna make it. Like I am not someone who likes cold temperatures. There's a reason that I have traveled and stayed in certain countries that I have traveled and stayed in before. You won't find me in cold places often because I prefer warmer temperatures. So yeah, I learned early on that I was not going to make a Portuguese winter if I couldn't even make like this fake winter that was like in summertime or in May this year. And a big part of it also had to do with I was not prepared. Like I said, I had packed spring and summertime clothing. I actually had to go shopping and get like some sweaters and some more warmer layers that I could put on. And honestly was really annoyed with that because like I came to Portugal ready for the sun and it was not giving that. It is May 20th and I wake up out the bed like this every morning because it is cold. I have on layers, a pair of shorts, a pair of sweatpants, socks, and come look at my bed. This big comforter, but also this blanket. It's that cold at night, y'all. And I don't even think it's that cold outside. It's that cold in this room because there's no insulation in these buildings in Lisbon. But fortunately, at least the sun is out right now. I say right now because this is always temporary. And another reason I think my room is so cold is because the sun it faces the other side. It doesn't face this way, so yeah, this has been my life. If you can't tell, I am over it. I was not prepared for this kind of weather in May. I did not pack for this. Another thing too is the buildings in Portugal are older. A lot of them do not have central heating or cooling. So I found that even when it did get warmer, I was getting extreme temperatures inside. So whatever the temperatures were outside, it was amplified on the inside. So like if it's cold outside, it's freezing in my room. Or if it's hot outside, it's like scorching hot inside. And like fortunately, my host gave me a fan when it was hot, but there's not much they can do when it's cold because using little heaters and things like that, it runs up the electricity so much. I had a friend who had been living in Lisbon and she told me that basically in the wintertime, like she was freezing and would have her heater on all the time. And it ended up being her bill for her electricity was almost as high as her rent. Like that, that is extreme. Was not gonna make it. That alone had me looking like, I don't know, like maybe we could do the 3 months, but I definitely cannot be here throughout the whole year because I can't do these cold temperatures and then not being able to ever have like warmth or the cooling that I need when I am inside in the comforts of where I'm staying. And that kind of leads into the second reason why I didn't see myself living there long term. The older buildings, it just wasn't doing it for me. It was hard enough trying to find good accommodations in Lisbon. But with them being older, I've heard of a lot of people dealing with issues of just trying to find a place and having to look out for things like mold, just trying to make an older setup kind of like work. So like the layout of the apartment may not be, you know, like a more open floor or more modern layout you'd be used to. And then that heating and cooling thing for me, I'm just like, no, I need to be able to control the temperatures of where I'm staying for sure. So that was the second one for me, just the older accommodations that were available. And then the third reason, which has a lot to do with the previous two, but the price of accommodations were outrageous. I could not believe how much these old buildings that weren't even like equipped with what they needed to be equipped with, in my opinion, how much they cost. I am all for paying for what is fair. If something costs more, I just expect it to be of better value, higher quality. But for me to be paying out thousands of dollars and getting something that does not even equate to that amount, it doesn't sit right with my soul. Like, it just does not sit right with me. Initially, when I started looking for places before I got there, I was thinking that it was just something that was on Airbnb or just something, you know, that when you're a foreigner versus when you live there locally, you kind of have a different price range that you deal with. But when I got there, just talking with some of the people that live there, it was the same thing. Like, finding good accommodations at a reasonable price is so difficult. And reasonable price, I don't even know if that I don't even know what that is in Lisbon. I'll even drop in some screenshots that I took scrolling through Airbnb of some of the places that I saw. Like, it wasn't even making sense. I was looking at places for less than a month, so maybe like 3.5 weeks or so, and seeing outrageous prices like $13,000, $25,000. And these aren't even for full apartments. A lot of these are for a bed. Like, you don't even get your own room, it's for a bed, or for like just a room, and you're sharing a bathroom and a kitchen, and there's no type of amenities or anything else that's included. Or I even saw an RV going for thousands of dollars for you to stay there for 3 months. Literally just does not make sense. So I couldn't get with it. I could not make that make sense. Like, why would I leave the States when I didn't even want to pay that? Like, I wasn't paying nearly that much in rent, but like per month, like $25,000 a month, $23,000 a month. I'm sorry, y'all. That had me blown. I couldn't get over that things were that outrageous. Obviously, that's on Airbnb, so things are a little bit inflated, but I promise you, like, locally, prices weren't any better. I actually ended up finding a place on Facebook. It was for about 600 a month, 550 euro per month, and it was just for the room. I shared it with maybe 3 or 4 other girls, and it turned out to be a complete and total disaster. I'm going to make a full video on that and definitely link it to this video so you can check that out. I learned, like, you get what you pay for, and the price to pay for something that is decent was outrageous. So that just wasn't for me. I could not get with that. And that carries on to my 4th reason why Lisbon didn't work out for me, because it was the accommodations that were the most extreme, but I found that cost of value in general kind of did not match when it came to like food. I remember I ordered sushi one time, and it was like $20 sushi. So I got like 2 different rolls and some kind of like appetizer thing, and I literally ate it and was hungry. Like, I consider myself a reasonable person. Like, I could eat, don't get me wrong, but like, for me to eat an entire meal and then be like, what else am I gonna eat? Because I'm still hungry and I paid $20 for this. Like, the rolls were, I kid you not, like this size. Like, itty bitty rolls. They didn't even taste that great. Like, it was really just a waste of money. That was a waste of money. And after coming from traveling in Asia and having amazing sushi for like $8, I couldn't make it make sense. So like, the food wasn't mathing for me. I did do a lot of cooking at home. Groceries weren't too bad, but other things like the gym, I found like the membership, they were charging like $50 for a membership for a month, and like, it's not that fancy of a gym or that great, and then you have to pay an additional cost to actually get a card to walk into the gym. And I'm just like, why is the card fee not included in the cost of the membership? Again, not making sense. And yeah, it just seemed like everything in Lisbon came with an additional cost, or like an upcharge, or just that inflation had just gotten out of control there, and the cost of value just, it wasn't doing it for me. And this leads me to my 5th reason why Lisbon was not it for me. The bureaucracies, the systems, the things that are in place with how things are ran in Lisbon, it just was not aligning with my belief system. Like, I don't know how else to put it. The visa process, the digital nomad visa process, in itself, it was intense. Like, I obviously did my research before going, and I was aware of the requirements, but it was kind of like, the more that I was there, the more that I realized it was not going to be something feasible for me, or something that I even wanted to do. So one of the biggest requirements that was not working out for me was accommodations. When you're applying for the digital nomad visa, you have to already have a place to stay and secured like a signed lease at a place for, I believe it's like 6 months. So we already talked about like the cost of rent being outrageous. In order to secure this type of lease, a lot of these places require a deposit and then a down payment for like the rent. So like you're paying at least 1 month's rent for the deposit and then maybe 2 or 3 months of rent in advance just to get the apartment. Now, once you get the apartment, you still don't have the visa. You need this lease or proof of a lease in order to get the visa. So essentially, you very well could be paying for an apartment that you're not living in while you're waiting for your visa to be approved. Then, on top of that, I was in this Facebook group called, I think it's Americans and Friends in Portugal. I'll tag it or drop the name of it somewhere. But in this group, they are basically discussing the visa process, not just for digital nomads, but for any visa that people are trying to apply for in Portugal. There are people who are sharing their experience, sharing questions. It's a lot of really helpful information in there. But a lot of people sharing their experience were sharing how they had applied for the visa. You know, they have all their paperwork in order. They're going. One of the final steps is to go to the government office there, and you have to have your in-person meeting to get your visa approved. At one point, the appointments to go to this office, they just completely shut it down. Like, nobody was getting appointments. The system just was frozen, and there was no explanation as to why or as to when these appointments would be open again. Now remember, these are people who have already paid for their lease. They've already paid to open a bank account. They've already invested a lot of money. You have to get a Portuguese ID, which costs money. You have to open up a bank account, which costs money, and you have to put a certain amount of money in there. So they're tying your money up that way. You have to have an apartment for a certain, you know, amount of months to show that you've already like worked out your accommodations where you're gonna stay. And not to mention this in-person meeting, if you're not living in Portugal, because some people, you know, if you're on your passport, US passport, you have a limited 90 days that you can be in the country, they're flying back and forth. So like there's so much money invested into just getting the visa. If you get approved, imagine going through all of that and getting denied. I was like, there's no way. It's already bad enough that the requirements are so steep and they require so much. But for their government system to not even meet you halfway, for them to be moving slowly or just not be responsive or just flat out like stop taking appointments with no rhyme or reason, no, I can't. I could not get with that. It was not mathing. It was not mathing. So yeah, that was my 5th reason. No surprise there, honestly. Like, what government anywhere is necessarily doing the greatest? It just, for me, that seemed to be more of a sign with everything else that was not aligning with this visa process being as complicated as it was. I didn't even want to start or get involved with it at all. So the 6th reason that Portugal did not work out for me, or Lisbon. I say Lisbon and only Lisbon because I did have intentions during the 3 months to travel to other parts of Portugal. I've only been to Faro and Lisbon. So, in Sintra, but I don't know if you really count that as like another city. But at least to say, like, I hadn't seen like other places, like Porto. I wanted to go to Coimbra. There were just other areas that I wanted to explore so that I can get like a broader view of Portugal. But in Lisbon in particular, I found the community to be hard to break into. And I say this from 2 sides. One side relating to the locals and the people that are from there, and the other side relating to the expats, and maybe more people that are like me that have moved and immigrated to Portugal. From the local side, I did try my hardest to speak to people in Portuguese when I could. Having my fluency in Spanish helped a lot with that. So there were, you know, conversational words. I was able for the most part to get through like normal greetings and things like that. But even in doing that, I didn't find that many of the Portuguese were super open or friendly towards me. They weren't necessarily mean. It's just they weren't going out of their way either to like really help or want to speak to me. So an example that I have of this is one time that I was taking the bus. I saw on the map that there was a certain number that I needed to catch. I saw that bus coming like from this direction. And even though the bus stop was, like if I'm facing this way, the bus stop is maybe a block, I can see it, but like a block behind me, and the bus is coming this way. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'll run over here, catch this bus. Obviously it's gonna make like a U-turn, hit this stop, and like keep going. So I run over to the bus as he's like about to close the doors. The bus driver is about to close the doors, and like right as I walk up, like he opens it, and I'm like, yay, thank you. Like I get on the bus, he's unmoved, like he's just like whatever. So I get on the bus and sit down. He makes the turn and goes to the stop, and then stops the bus and tells everyone to get off. And I'm so confused, like, wait, why are we getting off? Like I just got on, and I know this bus, like I can see the route, like we're supposed to continue on. But not understanding what's going on, I get off the bus. There's 2 other girls on the bus too. I think they must have got on the stop before me, and they're looking just as confused, like why are we getting off the bus? So we get off, they start walking. I guess they're going to find another bus that they can catch, thinking that this one, I thought it was like broke down or something, till I saw him basically close the doors and he's just sitting there. And then like 2 minutes later, I kid you not, he opens the bus and lets everybody back on. To which I have to pay again in order to get back on the bus. Now, mind you, taking the bus, it's like $1 and some change, but like principle. You could have simply said like, you know, I'm about to turn here, you can catch it. You can catch it from the stop that I'm about to stop at and then get on the bus. But no, he went out of his way to open the door to make sure I could get on this bus. Just to let me ride it for a stop and have to pay again to get back on the stop. I'll get back on the bus. I just feel like in other places that I've been, even if they speak a language I wouldn't have understood, they would have tried to express to me like, hey, you probably don't want to get on right now because there's only one more stop that you could ride this bus on, so it doesn't make sense. No. And then when I got back on again, I'm looking at him again unfazed. It's like I was not even there. So like it wasn't me. He didn't go out of his way to necessarily be mean. He literally just did his job. But it's just like, you could have helped me out. Like you could have said something. So yeah, I would find incidences. I would have incidences like that with just Portuguese people, and I found myself more often than not gravitating and connecting with Brazilians, and that doesn't surprise me because Brazilians that I've met anywhere, they're so nice and so friendly. So like it made sense, but it kind of just highlighted even more for me how much I was not really connecting with people from Portugal, and how much like it wasn't in my head. You know what I mean? Like I was connecting with Brazilian people for a reason. They're nice, they're friendly. Not to say that the Portuguese people aren't. I think they just might take some time to warm up to, but I felt like as a foreigner, I just felt like there was like this coldness or hesitancy from the locals, and not necessarily because they were mean or like unfriendly. It's just like they're minding their business and they could care less, you know, like about other people in there. They're not going out of their way to be super friendly, especially just because I'm a foreigner. So yeah, that was one aspect of community. I found it really hard to try to like immerse myself or even connect with the Portuguese people. On the other side, with the expat community, I don't even know where to start with this one. To be fair, I never went to any events in person. There's a group called Black in Portugal. I joined on Facebook. I follow them on Instagram. They seem to be pretty active in terms of like throwing events and like engaging their community and things like that. But I don't remember I think there was one event that they had while I was there, so it was kind of just like a timing issue. There weren't really a lot of events going on during the time I was in the city. But on the other hand, I also wasn't super pressed to necessarily go to events or meet up with people in person from this group, just because I had been seeing things and hearing things that kind of were like rubbing me in the opposite direction. To give an example, in the Facebook group Black in Portugal, I saw a younger girl. I think she mentioned that her age was like, I don't know, she had to be in her early 20s, if not younger than that. So she writes a post about how she's living in Costa Rica. She's looking at Lisbon, you know, being the next place that she comes to visit. She's really excited and, you know, just open to like meeting people or hearing any recommendations that people have about living there or reasons that they like living there, right? A real generic post that you'll see in a lot of these Facebook groups where they connect expats that are living in other places. And I saw the post maybe like 2 or 3 hours after it had been posted, so I didn't see the original comments that were made, but by the time I saw it, there were so many people apologizing on behalf of whatever comments had been deleted, because people were coming at her because of her age, like telling her that she's too young, or like basically telling her that she didn't have the right to be coming to Lisbon because she was younger. And I was just like, that is so weird. Like, that's weird, right? That's weird. So it just seemed to be like this elitism, if you will, or like this you can't sit with us mentality when it came to the older crowd or the more mature crowd that lived in Lisbon. And to me that made no sense, because we're all not from here. So who are you to go to another country and tell someone that they don't belong when you yourself aren't even from there, you know? But again, that's just like one incident. I may have seen like another post like that where it just seemed like people were attacking someone simply because of their age. And you know, this is, I take it with a grain of salt. You know, people on the internet, they get Twitter fingers and seem to say things that they wouldn't say in person. So it's kind of like, you know, something that's in the back of my mind, but that wasn't necessarily the reason that like stopped me from, you know, going and intermingling with this community. I think what did it for me was the friend that I mentioned that was living in Lisbon. She also shared some personal stories of people targeting her at events because she was younger. And it wasn't just her, it was other people that she knew and hung out with. Now, when I say she was younger, she's like in her mid-20s. And I myself, I am in my early 30s, even though most people assume I'm in my mid-20s. So that had me less than enthused to really want to engage in this community. Again, this was nothing that was personal towards me, but just seeing how people were responding to people that were my age or looked my age. Like, I've never really dealt with reverse ageism while I've been traveling before. But that's really what the community was given. Like, they look like they do a lot of fun activities. Like, I was actually excited, and that's what appealed to me with coming to Lisbon. But after seeing and hearing, you know, about some of the things that had happened to my friends and just other people who were younger and were traveling there, it wasn't giving welcoming in the way that I have experienced in other communities and other places I've been to. So yeah, that had me less than enthused with wanting to engage with the community there, and also with just wanting to be in Lisbon in general. Okay, so 7th reason. I got a lot of reasons, y'all. But this affirms for me, like, the decision that I made is, it just wasn't for me. The influx of immigration there. So Portugal is very diverse. It attracts people from all over. Different parts of Africa, different parts of Europe, obviously places from like America and the western side. So that's all fine and dandy, but I feel like it is almost becoming an issue. I talked with my Uber driver. He was from Portugal, and he was telling me how like the immigration is just, it's getting out of control, and it's because there's so many, you know, people coming, and the government doesn't really do much about it, or there's not a lot of regulations about it around it like it should be. And I feel like that could probably tie into why maybe the locals are a little bit more like cold at first to like, you know, new foreigners or, you know, immigrants being there. And I can respect it. Like, I get it. You have used your home, and then all of a sudden it's like being invaded by all these other people who aren't from there. I can get the defense. Like, it makes sense. I don't fault them for it. But just the fact that that is already an issue, it's not, it's almost like I don't want to contribute to that issue more by being there myself. So that, yeah, that kind of turned me off of Lisbon as well. Whew. All right, y'all, I promise. I'm getting to the end. I'm getting to the end. My 8th reason why I was not a fan of living in Lisbon. The scam culture. Whew. I'm just gonna give this at a high level because I'll definitely get into more details when I share my story time on my nightmare disaster of an apartment that I stayed in when I first got to Lisbon. But even before I got to Lisbon, I was already dealing with scams. A lot of them are on Facebook, but the scammers they are professionals. Like the scammer that I was dealing with before the nightmare apartment that I got, it was like they had basically convinced me that they were a legitimate I can't think of the name of it, but one of these actual apartment companies. They basically took their logo and like put it into an email and made it look like they were actually part of that business. When I talked with someone from that company, they were like, yeah, no, they're not affiliated with us at all. But they had like the whole front and the whole setup. I'm talking about down to like the marketing emails. They had basically like copied and pasted the marketing emails from this company to make it look like they were legitimate. Fortunately, it worked out where they didn't get anything from me in terms of money. I did share like my email address with them and like my phone number, and I'm sure that's probably out on the dark web somehow, but yeah, thankfully it wasn't anything worse. But it's not uncommon for people to get scammed when looking for places to stay in Portugal, and a lot of people have been scammed out of a lot of money. Like it's not okay. What makes it even worse too is that there is this, it's almost as if it's part of the culture. And I say that to say, when I talked about like the government having things in place or not having things in place, someone that lived there was explaining to me how taxes are so high. They're so high that tax evasion is actually not uncommon in Portugal. And this is because a lot of people do stuff under the table. Hence the environment for there to be so many scams. So it's like, it's almost embedded in the culture because like the people are trying to find workarounds because their government is taxing them so heavily, which I can get, but then you get into this like really gray area where people are just free to do whatever. And yeah, I'll go into more details again. The tea time, the story time on this place that I stayed in, definitely check that out because it had a lot to do with why I just knew within the first 6 days that living in Portugal was not going to be for me. But the whole scam culture was a big part of that, and also why I just decided I wasn't going to be there long term. Okay, last but not least, because this whole video is like me complaining about why I don't like Portugal. So number 9, reasons why I was ready to leave Portugal and could not live there long term was just because the food was lacking. I kind of touched on this when I talked about like cost to value, but for me, there was nothing that I ate that was like, yes, like, and I'm talking different types of cuisine. I'm not just talking Portuguese food. The pastéis de nata, those might be like, those are still my favorite. Those are good. They're good, but like how many of those can I really eat? Like I cannot sustain off of pastries. So yeah, the food was not cutting it for me. I mentioned that I did a lot of cooking at home. Usually when I ate out, it was to get pastries. Like the pastries are really good. Portugal can have the pastries. But even when I would order out, and again, it goes to cost of value, I would see things like maybe a pizza. I had a pizza that was pretty good, but like what I paid for it, was it that good? Meh, you know? So yeah, the food did not cut it for me. It definitely wasn't enough to make me stay, but I mean, when you look at the list of all the other things I mentioned, even if the food was good, it still was not going to be enough, just be honest. So yeah, that's all the reasons why I could not live in Portugal. I know this video is like bad negative and taking shots at Lisbon in particular, but like don't get me wrong, I would still go back to Lisbon for a vacation, absolutely. Probably not anytime soon though. I still have to get over like the trauma that this last trip left with me, but yeah, I would absolutely go back to Portugal. I still want to see Porto. I still want to see some of the other like cities that are in Portugal, and I would go back to Lisbon too. Like, do not get me wrong, it is still very much a nice city to visit. I just think for me personally, solely for vacation. I'm not going there to live. You couldn't, you could not pay me because it wouldn't be enough to cover my accommodations, you know? So yeah, if you have never been to Lisbon, if Lisbon is on your list, definitely go check it out, absolutely. If you are considering living in Lisbon, check out the Facebook groups is the best advice that I can give you. And definitely go to Lisbon and visit on a month, on 3 months, as much as you can to get a feel of what it's like to actually live there, because it is a big difference between vacationing somewhere and living somewhere. So that is it for this video. If you made it this far, shout out to you. You are the GOAT. Thank you for watching. Like I said, I'll be posting a video sharing my experience and my nightmare accommodation. Y'all, it really is some tea time. So be sure to check that out and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Please share this video with someone that you know who might be interested in going to live in Portugal, because I do think it's just important to get a full picture of what to expect when going there. I'm also going to link some helpful Facebook groups below that give you a better idea of what it's like to live there. Also, just to balance out the energy on this video, if you live in Lisbon or you've been to Lisbon and you are thinking about moving there, please share down in the comments below some of the things that you love about living there. I don't want this to be an all negative video, and I definitely don't want to put Lisbon in a bad light. It just was not the place for me. So yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Ciao, ciao.